children that don't have father figures in their lives, they have a hole in their heart, and they're gonna find a father figure somewhere. And if they find it in the streets, they're gonna find that father figure from people that are maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 years older than them, who also didn't have father figures. And so why not? It's not about the money. Money is nothing more than a tool.
Everybody, it's your boy Chris. It's another amazing episode of Financipation. This channel is all about making money. It's all about saving money. It's all about building generational wealth. It's all about financially emancipating yourself from generational poverty. I'm really looking forward to this interview today, everybody. Right now in America, there seems to be this kind of agenda, if you will, to kind of remove, I would say, fathers and men from the home, especially Black men. And social media right now, television, a lot of times is telling our women to be strong and independent. And I think the baby mama / I don't need a man crowd is unfortunately wreaking a lot of hellish effects pretty much on our community. For what it's worth, the poorest demographic in America right now is a single mother. And the effects that this is having on our community, I don't particularly like. And that's the reason why I wanted to interview this very powerful gentleman right here. I know this guy very well, and from his U.S. military days to his public school teaching days for over 20 years, to the young men at church that he's mentored, this guy has been teaching boys how to be men for over 50 years. And as far as the children that you raised, I'm gonna let you talk a lot more about them, but all of them are highly successful. All of them have master's degrees. All of them are very family oriented. All of them are dominating corporate America right now, and all of them love God. And that's probably the one that you like the most. And all of them are pillars in your community. I know this dude very well because the guy I'm about to interview is my father. And I would not be the man that I am today if it was not for him and my mom's. So with that, if you want to hear an interview on how to raise men successfully in this crazy world that you live in, you are absolutely going to love this podcast. So, yep. So with that, let's go ahead and let's get started. So first off, please introduce yourself, Dad.
Good evening, everyone.
About yourself, okay?
Before I introduce myself, I would like to say happy Juneteenth and happy first Father's Day to Chris. Amen. Amen. It's a wonderful thing to be a dad. It puts a whole new perspective on life, life present and life future. It changes your values because it's no longer about yourself. It's about you helping the next generation to become the best that they can be. And any parent that loves their children, and most parents do, they want the best for their children. And they want their children's worst days to be better than their best days. And they want their children to inherit their best qualities and all those other qualities that cause them to do silly things in this life, to leave those behind. But we know that things go from generation to generation. So many parents that love their children, they want to make sure that their children have a better life than they do because the parents themselves are standing on the shoulders of others that have gone on before them. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Norman Phelps. I'm married to this amazing woman, Connie Phelps. We've been married for over 42 years. We have 5 children, 4 amazing boys and 1 incredible daughter. The Lord has given us 8 grandchildren, 4 boys and 3 girls. Growing up in Indianapolis, which is where I'm from, I realized that the community that I was in is not like the communities of today. The community that I was born and raised in, the men, the fathers, the older brothers and sisters, they all took part in the community. I could be in 1 block or 2 blocks down or 5 blocks away, and if my mother or father needed me, within 5 minutes, word got to me without the advent of a cell phone or anything, and I was on my way home immediately. As Chris said, I am a retired high school counselor. I taught at the high school level here in Guilford County with Dudley High School. And after I retired from Dudley High School in 2014, I substitute taught until COVID hit. And I just love just sharing information and passing on to the next generation. And prior to my high school counselor days, my wife and I were in the military I was in the military for over 21 years, and Connie was in the military for over 22 years, excuse me. And we went all over the world seeing how cultures lived, how generations were, how ethnicities were. And every culture, no matter where you are, has its challenges. That has been since the beginning of time. In our travels, while raising 3 boys, the Lord allowed us, number one, to know Him for ourselves. We got saved in Germany in 1981. And I think that was, outside of being married, that's probably the best decision that I had ever made in my life, to become a born-again Christian. And with my faults, because no one is perfect. The only person that has ever been perfect, because I am a Christian and live in a Christian society, then I believe in the doctrines of Jesus Christ. Not the cultural Christianity that dominates the Western world, but the biblical, scriptural Christianity that is biblical, because there's a difference between the two. Let me give you an example. Cultural Christianity would tell you that because what Ham did with his father Noah cursed Ham, and they'll point you to Genesis 20, they'll point you to Genesis 9, but they got that from tradition. They didn't get that from the Bible, because the Bible says Noah never cursed Ham. Noah cursed his grandson, Ham's son, Canaan. God never cursed Ham, and so they used that as a precept to justify slavery, and now the new slavery, which we call the Jim Crow laws of today, the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. So I'm a firm believer that we taught our boys 3 cardinal principles: love God, treat everybody right, and always do your best. Do what you have to do first, and then you can do what you want to do second. And always put your best foot forward. And if you do that, then you'll be surprised how things will come your way. And just be disciplined and consistent. And that's what it takes.
Absolutely. I love that. You basically said that you were born in Indianapolis. What was the quote unquote Black community like, I guess, back then? What are 3 things that are like back then? Because I always hear the day from my generation that back in the day, we were a lot more together back then. Or back in the day, you could call somebody saw you acting stupid, they had a permission to whoop you. What was it like back then? I would say this is the 1950s, correct?
The 1950s and the 1960s, that's right. Every current generation always says that the generations after them are not as great as the ones that they came up in. And there's some truth to that. And at the same time, the generations that succeed the current generations should have the ability to stand on the shoulders of those that have gone before them. And we were close knit. We didn't lock our doors. We kept our windows open at night to get fresh air. We were not prisoners in our own homes. We actually had our educators and, believe it or not, our police officers living in our communities. So the police officers didn't come and take you to jail because you made a stupid childhood mistake. They took you home to mom and daddy, and mom and daddy dealt with you however it was fit. And like you just said, Chris, when individuals messed up, or mom and dad wanted to get hold of you real quick, word of mouth is passed real quick. And before you knew it, within 10 minutes, you were home, no matter you were playing sandlot football, baseball, soccer, down in the canals, swimming in the nasty water, just doing whatever, you knew that you had to get home real quick. And moms and dads protected not only their children, but their neighbors' children. I remember the Blewitts and the Beamans and the Collins and all these people whose dads were surrogate fathers for all of us. And my father, your grandfather, was the same way. If he saw somebody doing something wrong, boy, you better go home before I tell your mom and your daddy what you're doing. And you took that to be gospel, and you went home and did what was right. And yeah, there were some knuckleheads in the community, in our neighborhoods, as in all neighborhoods, and the choices that they made, sometimes they paid a dear price for that, and other times it was a warning. We had the thugs that thought they wanted to do the thug life. They wanted to see how bad they could be. They ended up in jail, or they ended up dead. And others took heed, and they saw that, and so they did what they were supposed to do to make sure that they listened to those that were before them. I mean, I've got childhood friends right now. As a matter of fact, on my birthday, one of my best childhood friends right now, he turns 1 year older than I will today. I mean, he turned 70 and I turned 69. So, and we've been friends before we knew each other, before we knew our names. I mean, that's just how it is. And I have other friends, the same thing, where we just have lifelong friends, and they called you out. And sometimes it hurt your feelings, but they would tell you what was right. They kept you out of danger. So it was different. But every generation has had its challenges. Our generation has had to deal with, civil rights and inequality. My parents' generation had to deal with Jim Crow. Their generation had to deal with the antebellum era. Their generation before them had to deal with slavery. And so, but every generation, for example, would take if I planted a tree right now, the tree's not going to give me shade, but the generation after me, that tree's going to provide shade for them. And so the things that I do today and that we do today is not just for our benefit for today, it's for those that come after us.
Got you. It's interesting because Native Americans have a saying, anything you do it for thinking 7 generations in the future. And anybody that watches my podcast, I've done videos and stuff like that talking about the decisions that you make today. Don't think of them as how they affect you, about that party you may want to go to, that girl you may want to talk to, or whatever. Think about how it's going to affect your great grandchildren. And if you think like that, you will be so much more successful in life. You said you're almost 70. I've always been kind of curious about that. Were you part of that high school generation that integrated, or the middle school that integrated the schools? If that's the case, what was that like, being the first wave of Black folks to go to school with white people?
I was.
Wow.
I lived in a Black community, and even though my father was an army veteran, they still had those laws that kept us in certain communities. And so, in elementary school, I started elementary school in 1959. And I graduated from high school in 1971. And so all through my elementary and what we call junior high school years, they call them middle school now, I never saw mainstream Americans as much as I went to high school. There were about 1 or 2 families in our neighborhood, because that's just how it was. We would see them, but we didn't consider them any different than us. They talked like us, they acted like us, because they migrated and integrated into our culture. When I graduated from high school, from middle school, junior high school, I went to this school called Shortridge High School. And that was my first time being around so many mainstream Americans in my life. However, Shortridge High School was maybe 60-40 when I got there. So, it was 60-40 mainstream Americans, 40% minorities. And about a year later, we moved from where we lived in 34th Street to Woodside, out in further northwest, and we went to this high school called North Central High School, and it was a total culture shock for me, because I realized then how mainstream America systemically will elevate some over others. For instance, they would put minorities that weren't part of. Because we actually had famous Black family members that was in our family, like Madam C.J. Walker. She had descendants that went to our high school, and others who were professionals. They were doctors and lawyers and dentists.
So the sons of doctors and lawyers and dentists, they went to this high school with you?
Yes, they did. They were. It wasn't. North Central had at that time, because it's 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, maybe 15 to 200 people there. 1,500 to 2,000 people there, maybe. My graduating class, it was 1,100 of us, and only 71 were Black. And so I learned
71 out of 1,100.
Yeah.
Wow.
and I was not part of that 10 percenters, because where I came from a neighborhood where they were hard laborers. Very few were
factory workers,
Chrysler, like my dad was. Yep. And so we moved into an environment where the children came to school in high-end cars, Porsches, and I was going to say Maseratis, but I remember seeing the Maseratis, Jaguars, and those types of cars, BMWs. And I didn't get a car until I was a senior in high school, and then that was an old 1970 Maverick Grabber but I still had a car at that time eventually. But I learned early on how to not assimilate, but to integrate with and keep my same culture with me, because a lot of people that look like me, because they came from the 10% that W.E.B. Du Bois talked about, they had assimilated into that culture pretty much, and so they took the high end classes. They were on the teams that fostered good things. For instance, I know you all have heard of Oscar Robertson. I know many people have seen the movie called Hoosiers. Well, when I lived in 34th Street, the brother of the coach of that team, actual coach of that team, actually lived next door to us, who taught us how to swim. But
Wow.
His uncle, they were the ones that came up with the Hoosiers. They used that platform to come up with the Hoosiers, and it was just amazing. As a matter of fact, Ray Crow was in that movie. His name was Ray Crow, and but I said that to say this is that I learned how to speak proper Chicago American English to blend in. you know the faces we wear, kind of thing.
Yep.
I learned how to go on the hay rides and to blend in like that, but I still kept who I was, even to the point where I knew that if I made mistakes because of what I looked like, I was going to get penalized much more for it, which I did. I thank God that mistakes that I made did ultimately cost me, like it cost a lot of other people. For instance, you all may know this, and I'm sharing this with the world now, but my last half semester in senior high school, I got put out of school for fighting. I got called the N-word, and I fought this person, and I know when they got put out of school, and they let me take one class so I could finish school, and I aced the class, but the teacher still gave me a D for the class. But because I think you only needed like 32 credit a semester hours of credit hours to graduate, I had something like 38 or 40.
Right.
So it wasn't a big deal for me to graduate from high school. But I said that to say this, is that I had to learn quickly how the system would tell some people, you go to an academic university, but I don't think you're ready to go to academic university. You need to go to a technical school or go to a junior college so that you can hone your skills. That's some of the information that was fed to many of the minorities that weren't in that upper echelon. They would tell us, you need to go to a technical school to hone your academic skills.
Right. So they would tell the affluent, I'm assuming white students, you're smart, you're intelligent, apply to Harvard, apply to Yale, apply to Princeton. But the black students, no matter how good your grades were, they would tell you, oh, you need to go be a carpenter, or you need to go be work on cars, or go work for a factory, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they didn't tell all of them that, but those that they thought they could persuade to do that, they would share that information with them. And it's amazing how a lot of us had to prove them wrong. As a matter of fact, the high school I went to, Babyface went to that school. I went to school with his older two brothers, Kenny Edmonds.
Kenny Edmonds, yep.
Yep, I went to school with and your Aunt Sandra went to school with Kenny Edmonds, and your Uncle Kenny was there, I think, before he got there. But Marvin and Melvin Edmonds, I went to school with both of them. But and we had astronauts come out of that school. I forget the astronaut's name. Other famous people came from North Central High School. The school had nothing but professional parents who ran Indianapolis, and some of the surrounding areas in Indianapolis went to that school at that time. Now I'm told that it's not like that no longer, because the white flight syndrome. They all moved further away from that school. But that school showed me firsthand how mainstream society, if you're not prepared for it, it can destroy a person of color. And I thank God for the kind of parents that I had and the community that I was raised in, that I did not let that affect me. I even had students to tell me, why are you working so hard to be like that? I'm not trying to be like anybody. I'm trying to be the best person that I can be for myself. And so that high school taught me how to migrate and to navigate my way through a system that really wasn't geared for me. It was not geared for people that looked like me. But I thank God, by his grace and his mercy, that I became a better person because of that.
Yep. It's interesting you say that. My first day in corporate America, actually, I was called the N-word by a guy who was supposedly mentoring me. And what was interesting was that I graduated very near the top of my class, had a phenomenal degree in engineering and everything. And when I first got the first day I was in corporate America, I got called the N-word by a gentleman who was tasked to basically mentor me. And when I went to HR about it, they said, he's been with the company for 20 years. You've been here for 20 seconds. So we don't believe you. You misheard that. And it's interesting that kind of some of the same battles you guys were fighting back then, we're still to some extent fighting today. And it's really interesting because now when I look this gentleman up on LinkedIn, he would technically work for me if I still work for that company, which I don't. So no matter what, to my listeners that are out there, life's not fair. A lot of times you just kind of have to study harder, work harder, and basically push through that door. At the end of the day, I have it much easier than you had it, Pops, and I absolutely have it vastly better than how Grandpa had it. So sometimes people, you just got to push forward. Something I've always wanted to know, actually, this is kind of completely off subject. What are the 3 coolest things that I read about in history that you actually lived through? I don't know, was it an Ali fight? Was it, I don't know, maybe Malcolm X or Malcolm X? What were some of the things that you found out about that I read about in history? What was it like living through that, I guess? What are 3 things?
Well, outside of America, and I go there and then I come back. When your mom and I got married, we were married, then we moved in, the military sent us to Germany. And we got there, and at that time, there was an East Germany and a West Germany. We got the opportunity to go to Berlin, which was divided into 4 sectors at that time. So we got the opportunity to see the Eastern Berlin and also Western Berlin. And so we saw the Berlin Wall. And then later on in the 90s, when President Reagan was president, when Reagan was president, the wall came down. So we saw history before history became history. I did get a chance, it was on big screen, it wasn't in person, but I did get to see Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier's second fight. Boy, that was a powerful fight right there. Boy, I tell you, that brought it was, I think it was either, I forget where it was either at the Coliseum or was it the State Fairgrounds or somewhere, or maybe it was downtown at the convention center. But that was a fight for the ages. And Frazier gave Ali all that he could. Ali still stood till Frazier said, I can't do no more. I saw that. I saw James Brown in person at the State Fair. I got a chance to see Angela Davis. Angela Davis, part of the Black Panthers. And speaking of the Black Panthers, I saw the rise and the fall of the Black Panthers in person. I almost became a Black Panther. This was, I think, maybe 1970 and 71. Another guy by the name of Bruce Bryan, another guy by the name of Curtis, I forget Curtis's last name, but we were so radical. We were going to join the Black Panthers, and Bruce Bryan's dad said, he told us, he said, guys, he said, stuff like this will follow you for the rest of your lives. And so we looked at that, and then we saw how our government destroyed the Black Panthers. I mean, they were the ones. Let me say this real quick. The majority of every Black organization that has ever been formulated in America was an organization of defense. The NAACP, SCLC, SNCC, you go on and on. The Black Panthers, they were organizations that were started to protect the Black community. And so when the Black Panthers wanted to utilize their Second Amendment rights, the FBI went after them big time. The government went after them big time. I mean, everybody probably saw that movie about the Black Panthers, but I actually lived it. I remember the day when they told us when they went into Chicago and killed the Chicago 7 in their sleep. Bullet holes everywhere. Girlfriend was pregnant. Killed them in their sleep. Also, and one of the programs that I really appreciate that the Black Panthers started there in Oakland is they were feeding the children before they would go to school. I remember when I was a little boy growing up, 3, 4, and 5. At 5 years old, I would go to school hungry because at that time my parents didn't have the money to keep the lights on. My dad's the only one that worked. My mom didn't work. They so it was either pay the bills, keep the lights on, or keep food in the refrigerator. But when the Black Panthers came up with that program, that's a program that they don't get credit for even today. They're the ones that started the school program. So
School lunch program.
School lunch program. They're the ones that started that, but you don't hear anything about that.
You don't.
Nope. And so I saw in person. I also saw in person how the masses can come together to break down unequal laws. The Jim Crow laws that my parents went through. Because of the civil rights movement, we didn't have to go through what our grandparents went through. I remember my father's mom, I was maybe about 9 or 10 years old. They were living in Pulaski, Tennessee. And you know where Pulaski, Tennessee is originator of? It's the originator of the Ku Klux Klan. And my grandmother told us she had all her little 11 children walking down the country road, and often onto the side, on the other side of the road, 2 young Black men were being lynched. And they saw them being lynched. And my grandmother said she and her babies, my father included, looked at those 2 Black boys. There was nothing they could do for them. And those Black boys knew that there was nothing they could do for them. All they could do was just keep it moving. And even now today, they have postcards of individuals being lynched and stuff like that. And so America has a history. People can say that wasn't me, but if you're doing some of the same things, then you're reaping you're gonna reap the same benefits. But I said that to say this. I also was part of seeing society integrated. When I was a little child, we couldn't go to certain amusement parks. We couldn't go to certain swimming pools. We couldn't drink in some of the water fountains. I even have a plaque right now that says colored on it, because that was for the colored people and then others. There was only one theater that we could go to when I was growing up. It was called the Walker Theater on downtown Indiana Avenue. And guess who was named after? Madam C.J. Walker. Madam C.J. Walker. You know, with the hair, with the hair and everything. And so, but after integration, we were able to go anywhere we wanted to. Of course, you got the looks, you got the name call and stuff like that. But we always traveled together. And so that taught me that change can happen if people will stand together, because every law that is created is supposed to be created for the good, but there have been laws put on books, not just in America, but all through the history of man. There have been unjust laws, and the lynching laws, the poll tax laws, slavery, those laws, all those are unjust laws. And
let me ask you this about integration. I've heard some people say that prior to, like, for instance, the Negro League baseball and stuff like that, there were thousands of Black lawyers in the Negro Leagues that were basically doing those guys' contracts. There were thousands of Black accountants. There were thousands of Black hotels, because at that time, Blacks, minorities couldn't go to white hotels. So they had to stay at Black hotels.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, it literally built the Black community, because if you could only go to your own people, the Black butcher, the Black banker, the Black accountant, the Black lawyer, the Black engineer, we all had to live in the same neighborhoods, and it built our community. But when integration happened, pew, 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 everybody just started literally leaving the Black community. And no better example of that is the Negro League baseball. When they integrated baseball, the Negro Leagues literally died pretty much kind of somewhat overnight. Do you think integration, I think it was, like, what are your thoughts on it? I think it was good, but some people do say it killed the Black community. What's your take on that?
I think that to a certain degree, it did destroy the unity in the Black community. Integration was to integrate everybody into the mainstream society, to be treated equally, to be treated fairly, to get the same opportunities for jobs, for employment, for places to live. That was just on paper. And what it did do is it took like, for instance, in education system, it took the best experienced Black teachers and took them out of the Black neighborhoods and sent them to mainstream America's educational systems and educational schools, and sent inexperienced young white teachers into the Black community.
And that's happening still to this day.
Yeah, it's happening today. And so the experienced Black teachers, and this is I'm going somewhere with this. This is Black experienced teachers. There was a mandate where you could, paddle kids, whip kids with paddles, and you would take them into the clothes closet and you would spank them. I mean, you wouldn't abuse them or nothing like that. I'm pretty sure it happened every now and then when a teacher got overly zealous or got angry. But when those experienced black teachers tried that in the white communities, they weren't having that. They said, you can't touch our children. And so then it spread and said, now, if you can't touch our children, we can't touch your children, you can't touch our children. So now children have no physical discipline in schools other than to be sent to timeout or sent to ISS, in school suspension or something like that. And it happens more and more to people of color than it does anybody else. But to your point, integration would have been a great thing if it had been truly integrated across the board, where they taught all the types of education in the school system and gave everybody chances. Because let's face it, the black barbers, the black police officers, the black teachers, the black educators, the black dentists, whatever, they migrated from the black communities and moved further out, which meant that mainstream America moved further out, and now they're coming back into the inner cities, through gentrification. And so it has its positive aspects and it also had its negative aspects. It made the individual
more wealthy,
and have more opportunity, but it weakened the community as a whole, because now people are supposed to love people and use their stuff, but now people use people and love their stuff instead of the vice versa.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it had an adverse reaction to the black community, and definitely the sports, like you said, it's just amazing. It was either I don't remember, but it's either the Indianapolis Indians or the Indianapolis ABCs that was in Indianapolis. That was a black major league team, but they disbanded.
Negro League team, Black Negro League team.
Black Negro League team,
yeah.
And they disbanded. And when it disbanded, a lot of black players didn't make it to the Major League Baseball.
Yeah, for every Satchel Paige, in my opinion, was the greatest pitcher of all time. He was a tall, skinny brother. The dude was, I think if I remember correctly, he was in his 50s when he got to Major League Baseball, and when he got to the World Series, he had his outfielders come in field because nobody could hit his balls, and his brother was like 50.
Yep.
And for every Satchel Paige, there were hundreds of brothers though that didn't make it into Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson. There was a lot of black players that didn't make it in for whatever reason into Major League Baseball.
I was gonna mention Josh Gibson. He played for Kansas City. That guy would hit a ball. You thought Willie Mays or somebody would knock a ball out the park. He knocked the ball out the park and knocked the cover off the ball at the same time. He was so powerful with his swing of the bat. And to be honest, I think a lot of the major league players that did not want to play with them was because they knew they were better. They were just as good, if not better, than they were at playing baseball. And there were those that did want to play with them, so that they could compete at no matter what the color was. But there were many white baseball players, and white people did not want integration. I mean, they called Jackie Robinson and Willie Mays, and they caught literal hell. I mean, out there on those baseball diamonds and in those baseball fields, and they said they had to be strong because they were doing something. And I think it's right now. Every season, baseball players one day of the season wear number 42.
Definitely.
I know what he did.
I love it. I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask it because you brought it up. Modern day experts call corporal punishment spankings child abuse. What are your thoughts on that?
This is your mom and my take on this. We before we started having children, we talked about it, and we said this is what we're going to do. We're not going to label our children negative labels, because they're going to hear that when they go out into America, and we're going to call that kind of names. We're going to give you guys positive affirmations. Even when it was critical, we're going to give you positive affirmations. We're going to let you know that no matter what you did, you still are children and we still love you. We may not like what you just did, and you were the worst, by the way. And
yeah, I know.
You were the middle child. You were the worst. You kept us on our knees praying all the time. And so there were times when we would take stuff from you guys. I know you remember that with your Legos. Sometimes you would play with your Legos. With your older brother Norman, he loved to read books. That's a whole other story about him taking books from Kaufman Elementary School, and we didn't know about that until later on down the road. we would send you out to y'all's room, but we never would send you to your rooms without eating first. We never did that. And of course, we did put you on punishment. And then there were those times when, yeah, we had to pull out the belt. And I'm gonna share this with everybody. Y'all can take me to the police if you want to. It's too late now. But I remember one time. You remember when we were going with the bird story, Chris?
Oh yes.
Yep. Where Chris and his younger brother, you know, Connie and I, we were stationed in Fort Jackson in South Carolina, living in Hopkins, and one of our fellow soldiers, his wife babysat for us until we got home. And so one day, when we went to go pick up Chris and Norman and Calvin, Chris and Calvin killed their bird. That time, they got a whooping, and they got more than one spanking or one whipping. Black people call it whooping or whipping, others call it spanking, but we never did beat them, because beating that's horrendous. That means where mom or dad would just beat their child with their fists or throw something at them, hit them upside the head with something, or no matter what they would do to them. But for us, we always made sure that first of all, we talked about what they did wrong and how they could do it right. And we weren't the best. Nobody has there's only one book that comes close to about raising children, and that's God's word. That's the Bible. And so there's really no manual. And so, yeah, we believed in corporate punishment because as a last result, because we know that when somebody gets talked to, they hear it and they don't hear it. It may settle in their heart somewhere, and they may go about their business. We can take something from them. They know they're gonna get it back later. But when you put a spanking or whooping on somebody, after you've gone about your way and they're going their way, they can still feel those licks that you gave them, and that's a reminder. Whatever you did, don't do it again. Yep. And they know how our children know how we raise them. But they have the opportunity to raise their children the way they want to, and you know, if they do time out, that's good.
Yeah, some kids they get it by taking punishment. Some kids they get it by talking to, and then other kids they need a little bit more physical deterrence. I'll say it that way.
Yep, agreed.
All right, let's keep it moving. I'm loving this so far. By the way, everybody, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It helps the algorithm. What is the role of a father in your mind, Dad? And what are 3 qualities you think a man has to have to be a great father?
Every father that has been great has made mistakes. That's what we do. And the sad thing is that when children are little, they think that their parents make no mistakes, they're invincible. But parents make mistakes. But having said that, a great parent, a great father, in my estimation, has to do 3 things. Has to be a leader. They have to be a protector and a provider. Number 3, and number 2 and number 3. The leader, they have to know where they're trying to get their family to go to. In other words, that father has a history of his people and himself, and whose shoulders he is on. So he wants to take his children to the next level. So as a leader, he should be able to know the way that they're going. He should be able to go the way that they're going. He should be able to show the way that they're going. Leaders are the ones that are the spear in that arrow. That they are the arrowhead in that arrow. So they're leading the way. They're buffeting everything the child comes up against. They're there, and then they are the protector. And I'm not taking nothing from the wife, because the mother does the same thing, but God created the man first, and at the same time he said, let the woman help the man be the leader that he should be. So he's leading. However he has the ability to lead, that's how he's supposed to lead. Lead them down paths that are going to cause them to be beneficial, contributing members in society. And then they should be a protector. Protect that child from all the nonsense that they're going to go through. And when the child is of age to ask the questions, give that child the answers. Because we're supposed to protect our children from abuse, from sexual harassment, racial harassment, inequalities. We're supposed to protect you all from all of those things. And so doing that means that there's going to be some times when you got to tell them the hard subjects. And many times, no matter how old a child is, if a child is old enough to ask a question, the parent should be willing to give that child the answer at the level that the child can understand. A lot of times parents will say, well, little Jimmy's not ready to hear that about this information. No, if little Jimmy can ask the question, give him or her the answer at that level. And then as a protector, sometimes you got to give them scenarios that they're going to run into before they run into those scenarios. And then provide. You got to provide for them. A child should not have to worry about a meal that they're going to eat. Are they going to have a roof over their head or clothes on their back? And there's a challenge. So the parent will sacrifice everything in their being, especially a father, to make sure that child's needs are met. The provision to sleep in the bed at night, to have food, to know that when they go to bed at night, they don't have to worry about being assaulted or something like that. And so those three things: being a good leader, a provider, and a protector.
Yeah, I just got a question that came in. I'm gonna ask it, but before I ask it, I do want to bring up, like I said, financiation. I talk about just building generational wealth, and I talk about different things you can do to do that. In my opinion, arguably the greatest thing you can do pretty much to build generational wealth is to marry the right person and produce children with the right person. Why? Because baby mamas are very expensive, and so is child support. And one of the alarming things, like I said earlier, is just this agenda right now to kind of somewhat take men out of the home. So some statistics I'm going to go into. Right now, children born into a two-parent nuclear family are nearly 4 times more likely to move from poverty to the middle class. Basically, if you're born to a household, a mother and father, a husband and wife, you're literally 4 times more likely to move out of poverty into the middle class. Conversely, children born into a single-parent home are without a mother and a father in the household, are nearly 4 times more likely to move from the middle class into poverty. So just think about that for a minute. So anyone out here that wants to basically, quote unquote, hot girl summer it up or be a single father or whatever on purpose, you're literally almost cursing your generations after you pretty much into a much, much harder life. Additionally, 85% of men that are sitting in prisons today, the one thing they have in common, whether they're Black, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're Arab, whether they're Indian, whether they're white, is that 85% of them say, I never knew my father. They had no relation with the dad. And on top of that, Dylan Roof, most white supremacists that are mass shooters, Crips, Bloods, ISIS, MS-13, Al-Qaeda for that matter, the one caveat they are noticing among all those young men is that they all say they grew up without a father. In the suburban shooters case, their father worked so many hours they never saw them. And in Al-Qaeda, Crips and Bloods and people like that, their fathers in some cases were violently taken from them. So to anyone out here that basically wants to say, okay, I want to raise my kids without a father or without a parent, you are almost cursing yourself, at least statistically speaking. And I'm an engineer, I deal in a world full of numbers. So it's just imperative about how important it is to have a father. Let's keep it moving. Most of your sons and most of your kids have higher education, master's degrees and things of that nature. What role, Dad, did education play in your household when you were raising your sons and when you were raising your kids?
I want to answer that question. I want to back up real briefly. Growing up in Indianapolis, because we had our educators and our teachers, our principals and our APs lived in our communities, we got education from a Black perspective, and they taught us Blackness even outside of the curriculum that was given to them. Because of course, when I was in my generation, they didn't teach us about all the different types of genres and areas that Blacks went into. They only taught us maybe about four people. You know, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois. They didn't take us about W.E.B. Du Bois, Sojourner Truth. Carter, G. Washington, you know, all these kinds. So right. They didn't teach us those things. And one of the things that I remember is that when about maybe 65, there was a gentleman. 1965. Very, very old. We call him Dr. Morton Finney. I didn't know it then, but as far as an elementary school educator, that guy molded me to want to always be a lifelong learner. And then later on, I found out that I followed in his footsteps as a soldier, because he was part of the 25th Infantry Division, one of the Buffalo Soldiers. The 9th, 10th, the 24th, and 25th Infantry Divisions. They didn't get credit about how they helped to formed the American West. But Dr. John Morton Finney was a Buffalo soldier who he would have us read all the time. Just read, to be a lifelong learner. And I remember doing that from the time I met him even to now. Now, if you look at my house nowadays, you'll see books everywhere. Books.
See him in the background.
Books. Yeah, well, not just here, but in every bedroom, in the family room, in the living room, in the kitchen, in the garage. Some I put out there in the barn, and then with the digital devices because I wanted to do that. And I said that to say this: the man lived to be 108 years old. He had 11 degrees. He was born in 1889 and died in 1998. Dr. John Morton Finney, look him up, from Indianapolis, Indiana. I mean, the guy was brilliant. He had law degrees, educational degrees, just brilliant. And so that made me want to make sure that I was a lifelong learner. I have probably forgotten more books than I've read that I remember reading. But I told myself that in my household, our children were going to see us reading. Number one, they were going to see us read the Bible. Because if we read the Bible, then that would help us to do three things: love God, treat everybody right, and always do your best. The three cardinal principles in our household. And so when you guys, you know this now, but remember y'all had those summer reading programs?
Yep.
That was even before the school systems would even have children doing summer reading programs. We had y'all read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, by Dale Carnegie, because to be able to, what's the number one thing, the takeaway from that book was that the number one word that people want to hear is their name. And so, I mean, the Bible, the religion, I would want you to make sure you understood a religious genre. Learn about your Black history, another genre in books that you had to read. And of course, mainstream American history, about the classics and what you learn in education. And then number four, just reading about self-help books, like the greatest, like The Richest Man in Babylon and The Millionaire Next Door.
Money Master the Game, all that stuff. Yep. Yes.
I mean, all these things. And the thing about it, Chris, these books have always been out there, and now they're digitized. And if you wanna keep something from our people,
put it in a book. That's what they say.
That's what they say. But we had you guys on a plan. The plan was you come home from school, you do what you have to do first, and then you do what you want to do. You had your daily chores, you had your weekly chores, your monthly chores, and your seasonal chores. Daily chores, of course, is to make up your bed. That's a given. It's clean up your room, help your mom and I clean up the kitchen. Weekly chores, seasonal, like cutting the grass. Monthly
shovel the snow. Shovel the snow, cut the grass.
Shovel the snow. And so we with discipline, we wanted to make sure that you guys had discipline in your lives, and that discipline and consistency would carry you all into who you are becoming even today. And so we wanted to make sure that your education level, and we stayed in contact with your teachers at every level. We want to know what you guys were up to, what you were doing, and everybody, Chris would get ones or A's the first 6 weeks or 9 weeks, and then the second 6 weeks he would mess up. He'd get put on a punishment, and then we go back, and he'd get back on track again. But we wanted to make sure they saw us reading. His youngest brother would see Chris and his older brother Norman reading, and Calvin would have his book upside down because he wanted to be part of what we were doing. And so even to today, they still are all readers. And like I would tell my kids when I was in high school as a high school counselor, readers are leaders. Readers are leaders. They saw us praying. They saw us talking about God. They saw us holding positions in the church, not to be saved, but to show our gratitude for God loving us first and saving us. Not with the cultural Christianity of the world, but the true spiritual Christianity. And there's a big difference, as I shared earlier. So in education, we told them early on in school, you're going to go to college and we're not going to pay for it. Yep. They went to college and we didn't pay for it. They all got scholarships, and they got more than, as a trio, they all got more than enough to go to more than one university, more than one time. And I'm not saying that that's a route for all people to travel, But that's the route that we wanted them to travel because we saw the value of education. And then they take another step further because now they're trying to become their own entrepreneurs beyond what they're doing in their 9 to 5.
You definitely say education was an absolute huge must in your household when it came to raising your kids.
Yes,
absolutely.
and not just the classroom education, but education in life. Because sometimes your mom would say, "Norman, you pushing them and working them too hard." I said they got 2 strikes against them. They're Black and they're male. Use those 2 strikes to their advantage. And we pray that the Lord would give you the Lord that y'all would find favor with Him and with man, and that your gifts would make a way for you all to show your talents to the world and to other people that you come in contact with. So education was a different part of y'all's upbringing.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. And keeping with that, there's actually a question I just got from somebody, young lady. I want to ask to you because I have my opinion about it. I want to get your opinion, Pops. She says, I work for the post office and I am a strong, independent woman. I have 2 sons with a bus driver. I don't think I need the boy's father to be in his life because his dad is just a bus driver, and I want to only date men that make over $100,000 a year. My baby daddy wants to be in my son's lives, but I don't really see the point because I'm a strong woman. I grew up without a dad, and so did my mom, and we turned out okay. So why do I need him around? Wow.
Yeah, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of single parents, men and women, that have raised successful individuals.
Barack Obama,
LeBron James, Barack Obama, all of them, they were raised by a father. And I don't know the specifics on the reason why some of these individuals' parents are not around them, but the parent is there to be that is left to be the mother and the father. That's a task. Now, with this young lady, that's her call. I'm not taking nothing from her. But if a boy's father wants to be in his life, and if you can get away from all the baby mama drama, baby daddy drama, that's her call again. But I would think that children that don't have father figures in their lives, they have a hole in their heart, and they're gonna find a father figure somewhere. And if they find it in the streets, they're gonna find that father figure from people that are maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 years older than them, who also didn't have father figures. And so why not? It's not about the money. Money is nothing more than a tool to lead, to provide, and to protect, and give guidance to the generation after us. And so if this man is a bus driver, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, if you are a garbage worker, be the best garbage worker that you can be, and have good morals and good ethics. What better mentor to look up to than say that's my father. I saw him every day. When he was home, he spent his time with me. He showed me a boy how to be a man. What greater experience can a young boy have? And it's been said that fathers love their daughters but teach and train their sons, and vice versa. Mothers love their sons but teach and train and raise their daughters. And so there's nothing wrong with the occupation, because you can have a butthole that's making $200,000 or $300,000 a year,
yep,
and they're an absent father,
yep,
or they are abusing that child,
yep.
And so if it's just about the money, I think that I don't know what the young lady's whole story is. Yeah. All I know is she is, and if she's bad mouthing that father, that son is going to go after that father once he leaves the auspices of that mom and gonna go find out the truth about his father. Is his father a deadbeat? Was his father trying to be in his life, but she did not allow him to be in his life? Yep. Let the child make his decision.
Just to piggyback on, this is something I see a lot, unfortunately, in my age group or whatever. And I met this woman before I got married all the time, constantly. And the first thing I would tell this lady is, lady, stop being so arrogant. first and foremost. That's not your son. That's you all's son. You didn't lay down by yourself and have that baby. You guys had that baby together. And I can say from being a black male, I don't know what color you are. I don't know what your race is, but I can just say being a male, you need a father in your life. The Latin guys I've worked with, the white gentlemen I've worked with, the Arab guys I've worked with who did not have a father, that's a pain that they never really, they'll say, Chris, I always wonder what it would be like to have a father. So you're seriously hurting your sons because you said you have two with this man. You're hurting your sons by being so selfish. That's the first thing. Secondly, I've Googled postal workers. I mean, you're probably only making about $45,000 a year. So how dare you be so arrogant to kind of badmouth this bus driver when you're kind of in the same financial status he is? And because this is a financial channel, lady, I understand the way HSA accounts work, the way 401k accounts work, the way Roth IRA accounts work, and the way, more importantly, the effect of compound interest works. If you guys pull your money together, you're going to do a lot better than basically if you're out here trying to quote unquote find a high value baller or whatever. And just because a person makes over $100,000, I lived in Miami for 8 years. I met men that made over $300,000 a year and they were paycheck to paycheck, dead broke. Just because a guy is making over $100,000 a year does not mean he's going to be wealthier than your baby's father. And another thing, less than 5% of men actually make that amount. So not only are you taking your son's father out of your life, you are also basically limiting your dating pool exclusively, because most men that make that kind of money, they ain't checking for a woman with 2 kids. Lady, I would say stop being so arrogant. And one day your sons are going to say, Mom, why'd you take dad from me? I actually met him because they're going to leave your house one day. They're going to get a chance to meet their father. And they find out basically that you took him from their life. That's a pain that those boys are never going to forgive you for. So I would say, lady, stop being so arrogant, because what you're doing is kind of satanic and you're somewhat cursing, I would say, the next generation. So I would say let your boys have a relationship with their father.
In addition to that, before you go on, Chris, that's her worldview right now, and maybe it will change when the boys get older, because I don't know how old her children are, but maybe one day they're gonna pressure mom and say, hey, where's dad? And they're gonna get to a point where they're gonna find out where the dad is, and they're gonna call their father and say, Dad, how come this? How come that? And they can't go back in time and change stuff like that. And if the father really wants to be in their life, he's not going to badmouth the mother, because the mother thought she was doing what was right. So she's erring on the side of caution that she thinks she should be doing. And at the same time, just realize that if the 3 of them, her baby daddy, her boyfriend that she's with now, if they don't have a problem, if they can work it out so the boys can spend time with their dad, their biological father, why not? I mean, why not? Because I mean, they can. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for.
Absolutely,
more than we credit for.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's just a crazy, sick story. And I've seen the end result of that or whatever, as far as how a lot of times when you take a father out of a boy's life, what the end result of that is, it unleashes, like I said earlier, literally hellish effects on society. Boys that are hurt become men that hurt society, period.
Hurt people.
Lady,
hurt people.
I sincerely hope you change your mindset one day. What's up, everybody? Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast so far. Stay tuned for part 2. I've been loving this episode, and I hope that you have been as well, okay? Stay tuned, all right? Happy Father's Day. Peace.